I mean, maybe it was ugly. Maybe some people didn't like it. But the idea that a major corporation, a successful major corporation, I presume that actually had an idea of why it wanted to change its logo, that they could be bullied by a mob that represented probably 0.5% of their customer base is extraordinary. And I think that Twitter and internet comments, internet discussions, they've made people scared.
So the fact that Facebook keeps changing profiles in a way that pisses people off is probably a good thing, right?
Well, I think eventually, if you're Steve Jobs, you're Mark Zuckerberg, you do enough without paying attention to criticism online that eventually, in the end, Steve Jobs wore down the Apple founders. Eventually he ground them down, and he had been so successful so many times over such a long period of time.
And they just assumed he was right.
The people gave up on saying, you know, that Apple was somehow dumbing down the computing experience or whatever it was that they used to say.
How many of you had to switch directions on your trackpad or your mouse when Lion came out? Yeah, that's crazy.
People hate this question.
So I work for Scott's.
Yeah?
Actually, we agree.
I'm a big fan.
Thanks. We agree with a lot of what's been said so far. One thing, though, that I would challenge you on is something you said earlier. It's kind of along the lines of what's supposed to which is we see a pretty strong, it's kind of anecdotal, but still a pretty strong correlation between editors or authors are really involved in the discussions and the sort of watching.
You guys did some research on this recently, didn't you?
That research is slightly different. It's more about slightly different. This is more about the actual author, editor, or some sort of voice authority being involved in the thread. And I mean, you said something like, it's the writer telling time to do it, which, I understand is to. I guess my challenge is, they do have to keep back people, they do Facebook accounts and companies, etc. Why collect your own material? Why not
I think because, as we discussed, there is a feedback loop. And a nice site like INI or Lifehacker, I think ends up with a helpful community, people who actually add to the story, which maintains discipline. Those are environments that people are actually happy to participate in. Every single writer on those sites participates in the stories. When you get a more antagonistic relationship between writers and commenters, that feedback loop can work in the other way.
And what I would say to that is I definitely see that too. I think what can work well, and we've seen this not only work in today's movies, but even at scale. There's special writers for Atlantic, Time, large sites.
They're not large.
But Ta-Nehisi Coates has an amazing community at the Atlantic.
Right, exactly.
And they're talking about race, right?
Yeah, they're talking about this politics. It's probably the most patriotic thing out there. And I think what the point is, it sort of gets pretty into this nasty, vicious loop. Commenters just hating.
See what happens if they have 5 times the audience that they do right now. The Atlantic is a tiny site with a very niche.
So I think it's purely a matter of scale.
I think the problems occur when you develop scale.
Yeah, well, I think it's fair. I just think my point was that I think there's something to say about even if I think there's something to say about the writer, the editor taking some ownership and having some thick skin and sort of being patient, because what we see is even if at first they get a lot of this nasty stuff back at them, it's kind of like you see an empty alleyway before it just
I've seen writers in tears. No, seriously, I've seen writers in tears. I've seen sometimes this works to our advantage, sometimes to our disadvantage. That you'll have a writer who, like Richard Lawson, he left for TV.com, and the comments there were so unpleasant and stupid and homophobic that he came back because he wanted to be in a more positive environment.
No, and I think some technology can help us on that, but I guess all I was going to say is what we see at its best is if a writer can sort of maintain presence. Ultimately, often what happens is the community comes in and sort of starts to take ownership themselves. They see that someone cares. They see it's not just something
And the Guardian has a similar policy too, then.
Yeah.
But I think technology is also the solution. We need to deal with our writers. So we need to provide them with the technology tools and the environment. We need to do as much as we can with the software to make the environment manageable, and then we can require them to spend more time in the comments. But the two go hand in hand. It's part of both are part of the solution.
Thanks. I typically hate it when people come to a mic and I just start pontificating, but that was very valuable. Nick,
Nick, there was
Were you good at participating in comments?
participating in comments.
Yeah.
No.
I'm trying to remember.
Yeah,
Nick used to love
I
it.
think when Valerie was around, there wasn't, one, scale issues were not a problem. And we really had a decent commenter base, and it was like a very regular set of people who were always, putting forth the same viewpoint. And that is not interesting on a large scale, but at a small scale you clearly need it. There's a reason that you weren't searching for a complicated comment system back in that day. But I was wondering, a lot of the things you said that when you get this large, you just can't do that anymore, are still done in, say, Reddit, where they have a different sort of discussion that they're aiming for, but it seems to all be really fantastic and driven in a completely different way than what you're seeking. And so I'm wondering, because you've acknowledged that some of the sites are not gossiping blogs. Obviously, Lifehacker is trying to have a different kind of conversation than Gawker is trying to have. It seems like even you are aiming for a different sort of conversation. So have you been thinking about implementing different solutions across the different blogs, or are you really going to try to do something that works for all of them?
We're coming up with a system which works for all of them. So I think Lifehacker will benefit from it too. It's obviously not, we don't have such a problem on Lifehacker. But Reddit's actually interesting because it's clean, it's massive, it's fast growing, and some of the Ask Me Anything conversations, maybe not Woody Harrelson, but was it the New York subway conductor? They had Ask Me Anything for the New York subway conductor. It was the most interesting thing I had read that week. It was amazing. It's also technically, the nested comments are extremely off-putting to most readers.
The user experience is complicated, but if you look at it, Ask Me Anything on Reddit, it's interesting that it's, or at least was part of Condé Nast, because it's a New Yorker profile and a Reddit Ask Me Anything have this sort of interesting symmetry to
but Reddit is not able to host competing political views. And within individual subreddits, there's incredible conformity in political opinion. And anybody who comes in from the outside and tries to disagree is immediately shouted down, voted down.
Yeah, it can be a very sexist place, very
So Reddit, like a lot of these online environments, it's kind of contributing to a political kind of cultural environment, of talk radio, of cable news.
So the filter bubble thing you think applies to
Yes.
this as well?
Wouldn't it be cool if we could actually I'm not saying put Tea Party people and Occupy people in the same room and have them come up with a new constitution for America. But wouldn't it be nice if people who disagreed moderately about things could actually be in the same room and have a sensible conversation?
What sites do that well right now?
What sites do they well?
Yeah.
I mean, only tiny sites.
I was just curious what your thoughts are on various social listening tools that are out there.
Phrase what, sorry?
Social listening tools. If you guys get any value out of them in terms of deriving insights about what people are saying.
What kind of tools are you talking about?
Radiant 6, groups and hexagons, stuff like that.
You guys, what do you use for analytics on social traffic? Because you just have your stats. Having visited Gawker, I don't think that's...
So Tom Blanco about head of tech is over there. Is there anything?
Yeah, it really seems like at Gawker, each editor kind of figures out what their tool set is between the tools that are publicly available. They're all using consumer stuff. It's not some deeply integrated social media platform.
And this gets back to my point about anonymity and first timers being important. That anyone who actually is registered as a regular commenter is probably going to be less interesting to us than somebody who has a document they want to leak or a photograph of some celebrity in flagrante.
Yeah, great outside contributors don't have a prior reputation as a comedian. So as we wrap up, this is a very interesting experiment. You're reckoning with one of the most kind of fundamental parts of yourself. This is a big bet. Well, one, this is something that's going to change on the site in 6 weeks or so, right? Very soon.
On Google.com.
Okay, and then presumably over the rest of the sites after that. What are the other big experiments going forward? Are there new sites?
That's the biggest.
That's the biggest.
Yeah, this is much bigger than any other project that we've worked on.
And you've taken risks before that haven't worked. Is this something? Are you confident it's going to work?
What risk do we take that haven't worked?
You know, we have sites that didn't become valuable to the brand. Kinja didn't work. Right? I love the site. It was good tech.
Well, actually,
as a
I do know
product-
there's like a ton of Kinja in the Gorka publishing.
I'm saying as a product, right? So you've had things that didn't work as part of the business.
I think this is a relatively meaty project. There's one other part to it that we haven't talked about, which is that we want to create rights and responsibilities within comments ownership, separate threads, allow people to remove participants from those threads, to control the participation in those threads at every level of the thread. But we also want people to be able to talk not just to specific people, but about specific things. So the idea that there's a conversation about there's a 2,000-word post, and then there's a conversation about the post as a whole, it's kind of ridiculous. The conversation should be about paragraph 6, or it should be about a specific part of an image or a particular frame of video. So there's what I'm calling fractional commenting. That's
So like what SoundCloud does, where you can leave a comment on a particular
it's
part.
what SoundCloud does with annotations, what Flickr does with annotations, but with threads being filtered, so you don't get an image cluttered with 1,000 little bits of graffiti. But we use the same system we use in our mainstream comments in order to identify the most interesting things about that image or the most interesting things about a piece of video.
So it sounds like there's a lot of work left to do. It's been a very interesting 10 years in Washington. Hope you all join me in thanking Denton.